Before the first flame touched the horizon, the cities of the plain shimmered like jewels under a merciless sun. Sodom and Gomorrah, twin empires of pleasure and arrogance, rose from the desert like mirages turned to stone. Their towers gleamed with bronze and lapis, their markets overflowed with gold, incense, and human vanity. Music never ceased. Night never brought silence. It was said that even the stars above dimmed themselves, unable to gaze upon such excess. But beneath that beauty, something festered, something ancient and unseen. The ground trembled not from the wind, but from a pulse deep within the earth, as if creation itself recoiled from what man had become. The air was heavy, charged with the scent of sin and smoke yet to come. And far beyond mortal sight, in the realms above, the judgment of heaven was already stirring. 3 travelers walked out of the desert that night, figures cloaked in dust and light. No one knew their names, but the sand bent to their steps, and the stars dimmed as they passed. One of them carried in his eyes the calm of eternity, another, the fire of retribution. They came not to trade nor to rest, but to deliver a final message, a warning that the world would not heed. Lot sat by the gate of Sodom when he saw them approach, their forms glowing faintly even beneath the setting sun. Though the people around him laughed, jeered, and mocked these strangers, something in their gaze struck him to the core. He rose to greet them, bowing low, unaware that he was standing before messengers of the Most High. "Turn aside, my lords," he said. "Come into my house, wash your feet, rest for the night." They looked at him for a long, silent moment, the kind of silence that bends time itself, before nodding. And when they entered his home, the walls seemed to breathe. Outside, the noise of the city grew, an endless sea of drunken voices and wicked laughter. But the moment word spread that Lot was hosting strangers, the streets changed. Torches appeared like floating embers in the dark. Men gathered at his door, shouting demands that twisted the night into something savage. "Bring them out," they howled. "Let us know them." Lot's heart pounded. "Do not do this wickedness," he pleaded. But the mob pressed closer, their shadows crawling up the walls. That was when the strangers moved. Their hands, no longer human, shone with a blinding brilliance. The mob screamed as light burst from the doorway, searing their eyes to darkness. Cries of agony filled the street as they stumbled, blind and raging, like beasts struck down by the sun. The lead traveler turned to Lot, his voice a calm thunder. "Gather your family. Leave this city. Do not look back." Lot hesitated, only for a heartbeat, but heaven waits for no man. Outside, a strange wind began to rise, warm and metallic. The sky shifted color, deep crimson bleeding into violet, as if the firmament itself had been torn open. Lot ran into the night, his daughters clinging to his cloak, his wife glancing over her shoulder at the city that had once been her home. Behind them, a sound began, low, rumbling, almost like the earth was drawing breath before a scream. Above, the angels looked back one last time. Their faces were solemn, their eyes reflecting the fury about to descend. Then came the light. It wasn't lightning, nor fire as man knows it. It was the wrath of creation itself, pure, blinding, and absolute. It struck from the heavens like a spear through the heart of the world. The towers of Sodom melted where they stood. Walls of gold turned to rivers of molten glass. The air itself ignited, turning breath to flame. The screams of thousands rose into the inferno, only to be swallowed by the roar of divine judgment. Mountains trembled. The plains cracked open, vomiting streams of sulfur and fire that devoured everything in their path. The waters of the Dead Sea boiled, rising into clouds of poison. From afar, Abraham stood on a high ridge, watching the horizon blaze as if a second sun had risen. He fell to his knees, tears carving lines through the dust on his face. The smoke rose like a pillar to the heavens, dark, endless, and terrible. Lot fled toward the hills. The heat licked at his back like a living thing, the sky raining fire behind him. His wife, unable to bear the sound, turned. Just once. In that instant, the storm caught her. She did not scream, she simply froze, her flesh crystallizing into salt, her hair turning white under the glare of divine flame. A statue of sorrow standing eternal beneath the ashen rain. Lot fell to his knees, unable to look away, tears evaporating on his face as he whispered her name into the wind. But the wind carried no answer, only the scent of burning stone. When the fires finally died, dawn rose over a dead world. Where once 2 cities had stood, filled with music, laughter, and sin, now lay only a blackened plain, its surface shimmering with heat. The earth was glass. The rivers ran thick with ash. No bird sang. No leaf moved. Only silence, vast, suffocating, holy. And somewhere beneath that silence, deep within the ruins, something glowed faintly, remnants of a power not meant for mortal eyes. Some say even now, when the desert wind blows over the Dead Sea, you can hear faint echoes, laughter, screams, the whispers of those who defied heaven and were unmade. The earth remembers. The air remembers. And the angels, long returned to their celestial realm, remember too. For in that night, the boundary between mercy and wrath vanished, and the fire that fell upon Sodom was not just a punishment. It was a warning. A reminder written in flame, that no tower, no city, no man, can rise high enough to escape the judgment of God. The smoke lingered for weeks. From the hilltops of Hebron to the far deserts of Edom, travelers spoke of a strange glow on the horizon, a crimson haze that refused to fade. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of burning salt and something older, stranger, like the breath of the underworld itself. What was once a fertile valley now lay silent beneath layers of ash. The Jordan River slowed to a crawl, its waters poisoned by what had fallen from the heavens. The land cracked and hardened, glimmering like obsidian under the sun. Birds that flew over it dropped lifeless from the sky, their wings seared by invisible fire. The people whispered that God himself had struck the heart of the earth. But the wise men, those who studied stars and stones, said something else. They said the sky had opened. That the boundary between heaven and earth had torn, and what poured out was not just divine wrath, but the energy of creation undone. They were both right. Deep beneath the ashes of Sodom, the fire still lived. The ground shimmered faintly, veins of molten glass threading through black stone. The heat never truly faded. Even now, after centuries, the earth there pulses faintly with warmth, like a sleeping heart. And there, amid that ruin, something moved. Not alive, not dead, but caught between. In the ruins of Gomorrah's temple, half buried under fused pillars and shattered idols, lay a hollow sphere of unknown metal. Smooth, flawless, reflecting no light. The survivors who dared to wander near it said the air bent around it, distorting the horizon. They felt whispers, faint, unintelligible, rising from beneath the ground. The nomads called it the tear of heaven. They said it was a remnant of the weapon that had erased the cities, a fragment of God's fire that had fallen too deep to return. Others claimed it was something far worse, a prison. A seal. A gate. No one touched it twice. Those who did wandered into the desert afterward, muttering about voices in the sand, lights that followed them at night, and the feeling of being watched by something vast and patient. Generations passed. The Dead Sea grew wider, swallowing the valley whole. Its waters shimmered with strange colors under the sun, hues no human tongue could name. Fishermen who cast their nets too far from shore never returned, and when their boats drifted back, their wood was bleached white, their ropes turned to salt. And yet, still, the stories remained. Nomadic tribes spoke of a forbidden land at the sea's edge, a place where the ground hums beneath your feet and shadows move though no wind blows. They said the souls of Sodom wander there, trapped in the glass, forever replaying the moment of their fall. But not all who came to that cursed shore came in fear. Long after Abraham's bones had turned to dust, when empires rose and fell across the sands, a new king heard the whispers. His name was Nimrod, said to be descended from the line of Nimrod, the first great rebel. He ruled from Uruk, a city of steel and flame, where men had begun to play with forces they did not understand. And Nimrod was obsessed with the old fire. He believed that what destroyed Sodom was not the anger of heaven, but a forgotten energy, older than the gods, that could be harnessed. He gathered priests, stargazers, and builders, men who could read the hidden lines of the world. Together, they followed the ancient maps, tracing the river south to where the Dead Sea breathed poison into the air. For weeks they crossed barren rock until the world seemed to die around them, no trees, no birds, no sound. And there, where the sky bent like glass, they found it. Half buried in salt, a black sphere pulsed faintly, the same tear of heaven. The king approached it, his face half lit by its inner glow. He could feel it hum in his chest, resonating with his heartbeat. This, he whispered, is not judgment. It is power. His priests warned him to leave it buried, to walk away before heaven's eyes turned once more upon the earth. But Nimrod smiled, the same smile his ancestor had worn when he raised the Tower of Babel. The next day, the excavation began. Workers dug for days under the burning sun, their tools sparking against the glassy earth. At night, the camp was filled with uneasy murmurs. The stars above no longer held steady. Constellations shifted, twisted, as if the heavens themselves were watching. Shadows grew longer, even when there was no light. Then, one morning, the ground beneath them cracked open. It started as a tremor, soft, rhythmic, like the beating of a buried drum. Then came the sound, a low, resonant tone, deep enough to rattle the bones. The sphere began to rise, hovering above the pit, surrounded by a corona of light so pure it burned the eyes. The men fell to their knees. Some prayed. Others screamed. From the light came a voice, not loud, but infinite. It spoke in no human tongue, and yet every heart understood. It was not a command. It was a reminder. You were warned. The light shattered. A wave of heat rippled through the valley, turning sand into glass and men into shadows burned into the ground. The Dead Sea boiled. The mountains groaned. When the smoke cleared, Nimrah and his people were gone. In their place stood a crater, vast, smooth, and black, its edges melted into perfect circles. And at its center, the tear of heaven pulsed once more, quiet, waiting. The scribes who survived by fleeing to the mountains recorded what they saw. They wrote of fire without flame, and a sound that came from the sky and the underworld at once. They sealed their scrolls in clay jars, buried deep in caves, whispering a single prophecy. Greater than, the fire sleeps, but it is not dead. When men again build towers to heaven, it will awaken. Thousands of years later, explorers still stand on the shores of that same sea, now calm, silent, and impossibly still. They bring instruments and drones, sonar and sensors. Yet every device fails near the southern basin. Compasses spin. Cameras glitch. Sound refuses to carry. Divers who descend beneath those waters report strange geometries carved into the salt, patterns too precise to be natural, too ancient to be human. And deep below, in the eternal black, a faint red light pulses. It is said that if you listen closely, you can hear a heartbeat echoing from beneath the floor of the Dead Sea. Slow. Relentless. Waiting. For though the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are gone, their sin was not buried, only sealed. And what sleeps beneath that glassy plain is not just memory, but something far more dangerous. The fire that fell from heaven has not gone out. It waits for the day when man's arrogance once again reaches for the sky. And when that day comes, the sky may answer once more. The satellite feed came in just after dawn. A grainy image at first, shifting sands, pale waves, until the computer enhanced it. There, beneath the southern edge of the Dead Sea, something glimmered. Not rock, not mineral. Something smooth, spherical, and perfectly symmetrical, as if carved by the hands of gods. At the National Archaeological Institute in Tel Aviv, Dr. Miriam Halev stared at the image for hours. It was impossible. The sonar signature indicated a hollow structure, a chamber, perhaps, sealed beneath 40 meters of crystallized salt. But what unnerved her wasn't the shape. It was the heat. Even through layers of rock and sediment, the sensors detected a faint, rhythmic pulse of warmth. Like a heartbeat. The same anomaly appeared again in satellite thermal scans. A steady, regular thrum, 20 beats per minute. For 3 nights, Miriam couldn't sleep. She scrolled through ancient manuscripts, flood tablets, and forbidden texts. One passage, from a long-suppressed Dead Sea Scroll, burned in her mind. Greater than, the fire of the valley shall sleep until men seek to pierce heaven once more. Then shall the seal be broken, and the breath of the deep shall rise again. Asterisk. She didn't tell her colleagues. Instead, she booked a flight. Within a week, she and her small research crew stood on the desolate shores where no life stirred. The air felt wrong, heavy, electric. Even the silence had a sound. They set up camp near the southern ridge, drilling small core samples. The deeper they went, the stranger the readings became. Magnetic fluctuations, electrical surges, spikes of radiation that defied known physics. On the 3rd night, their instruments began to fail. Drones froze mid-air. Compasses spun like possessed things. And every few hours, a low vibration rolled through the ground, soft but unmistakable, as though something vast shifted below. Probably geothermal, one of the engineers murmured. But his voice trembled. At 3:17 a.m., the sound changed. It was no longer a hum. It was a tone, deep, harmonic, almost musical. The desert sand trembled in waves. Miriam ran from her tent and froze. The lake, the Dead Sea itself, was moving. A spiral of light had formed beneath its surface, glowing like molten glass. Salt crusts cracked, dissolving into mist. The water began to lower, drained by a force that wasn't gravity. And then, through the haze, she saw it. The sphere. Enormous, black as night, rising from the depths with impossible grace. Water slid off its surface, hissing into steam. Around it, the air shimmered with colors she couldn't name, refracted rainbows of something not meant for human eyes. Her team screamed for her to run. But she couldn't. The sphere hovered there, silent, perfect, and then, slowly, it began to open. A seam split across its surface, releasing a blinding column of light that shot into the clouds. Thunder rolled from a cloudless sky. The ground buckled. Waves of air knocked the crew to their knees. From inside the light, shadows began to move. Not shapes. Not beings. Memories. Images formed, towers of glass, skies burning red, cities turned to vapor. Sodom, Gomorrah, Uruk, Babel, all replayed in silence. The pattern was clear. Every age, the same sin. Every empire, the same ascent. And then, a voice, calm, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. You were warned. The earth screamed. The light burst upward, splitting the night like dawn. Miriam's vision blurred. She saw her team running, collapsing, turning to dust. The air turned liquid, bending around the sphere. She tried to breathe, but the sky itself seemed to press down upon her. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The sphere dropped back into the sea, vanishing beneath the boiling waves. The glow faded. The silence returned. When rescue teams arrived at dawn, they found no one. Only scorched sand and twisted metal. The camp had been erased, as if scrubbed from existence. But days later, one thing washed ashore, Miriam's camera. It contained only one photo. A frame filled with blinding light. In the center, faintly visible through the glare, a figure, tall, indistinct, with wings made of fire and ash. When analysts enhanced the image, they found something else reflected in the lens, not Miriam's face, but an eye. Vast. Unblinking. Staring back. News of the event spread briefly, then vanished. Reports deleted, footage scrubbed. Officials called it a sinkhole collapse. But satellites continued to detect strange pulses beneath the Dead Sea. Not random. Rhythmic. Almost intentional. And something else began to happen. Around the world, seismic sensors picked up matching frequencies, faint echoes of the same heartbeat. In Iceland. In the Pacific. Beneath the pyramids. Even under the ruins of Babylon. It was as if the earth itself had begun to breathe again. Scientists dismissed it as coincidence. But those who studied prophecy knew better. The Book of Enoch had spoken of it, the reawakening of the Watchers, bound beneath the earth until man seeks to pierce heaven once more. Asterisk. And man is trying. Towers rise higher than ever. Data networks span the sky. Rockets reach for other worlds. The arrogance of Babel reborn in silicon and flame. The seal was never meant to last forever. Now, beneath the Dead Sea, faint red light flickers once more, invisible to human eyes, but not to the stars. The waters ripple at night, though there is no wind. And far above, astronomers have begun to notice something strange, a new energy signature, faint but growing, radiating outward from that same point on the Earth. They call it an anomaly. But in the oldest tongues, it has another name. The awakening of the fire below. Somewhere, deep beneath salt and stone, the sphere stirs. And for the first time in 4,000 years, it remembers.